Panel members, thank you for rearranging. We're going to very swiftly pass on to the Chief Constable. Or actually, I should say, maybe the Commissioner would like to introduce the Chief Constable, please, first.
Thank you, Chair. As members will know, obviously the Chief Constable doesn't come to every police and crime panel, but I've invited him to come today to inform you about a very important operation called Op Resolve. And this is about strengthening the front line, and I believe it may be music to your ears, but he's here to be able to give information over about what that's about, and we'll be able to answer questions. But he won't be able to stay beyond that, and especially as we've had a little delay. So bear with us. Over to you, Chief Constable Vaughan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm away from the mic. I'll turn it round. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I also introduce a couple of my colleagues sitting behind me, Superintendent Ed Wright, who works in my office, or certainly for the next week he does, and then he goes off on a secondment to the Home Office, and Inspector Sedge Zegler, who's actually currently seconded to help Alison's office as well, but they're here to help today. Thank you for giving me some time to speak to the panel. As the Commissioner says, it's not normally my role to be here, but very happy to come. And from time to time, very happy, certainly around budget building, I come to make the case for the police budget. You all met me last January. Remarkably, it's 11 months since I started as an interim Chief Constable, brought in by the Commissioner at a time of difficulty around leadership. We had a Chief Constable suspended, and we had the acting Chief Constable suspended, and the force remained in special measures. It was a difficult time for Devon and Cornwall Police, and I was delighted, honoured actually, to be asked to come back to provide some immediate stability, which I was very pleased to do. I had a couple of major priorities when I came in. The first was to do just that, which was to re-establish stability in the leadership team. A large organisation like a police force needs strong and stable leadership, and that is something I hope I've demonstrated over the last 11 months. And we have our Deputy Chief Constable back, and he's now working hard and performing well and has my full confidence, and we have a stable team. The other thing that I set out to do was to improve performance to such a degree that the inspectorate, the HMIC FRS, were satisfied to disengage us from what is parochially known as special measures. And I'm pleased to say that, building on the momentum that the force had built over the 2 years before my arrival, we were able to navigate our way out of enhanced monitoring in July of this year. And then my third objective was to set a course to accelerate the force away from that difficult period into success, with looking at our budget planning, looking at our workforce planning, and the strategic kind of planning, 3 to 5 years, supporting the Commissioner's police and crime plan delivery, and ensuring that the force was on a strong footing going forward. There we go. Right, so that was my what I set out to do. As I now move into this period of navigating and accelerating away from a period of special measures, one of the things that was absolutely obvious to me, having met nearly all of our frontline staff, more than 5,000 of the 6,000 people that we employ over the spring and summer, it was obvious to me that the gaps and the vacancies that large organisations naturally hold because of the way we turn over staff were absolutely in the wrong place. I found the front line of Devon and Cornwall Police, neighbourhood policing, and our patrol function, which is our uniformed officers, the men and women that do the immediate response to emergencies, in a place where they were carrying a disproportionate amount of the vacancies. I'm telling you things you know, because all of you, in one guise or another, have written to me and to the Commissioner around gaps in neighbourhood policing and vacancies and the lack of visible policing. So in August, I set the firmest direction into the force yet that I've set. Having come out of special measures, we celebrated for just one weekend and then placed ourselves on a footing of further improvement. Operation Resolve is the delivery operation for the direction that I set. And the direction I set was that I wanted to restore the uniform frontline patrol in neighbourhoods to its design by the end of the year. No ifs, no buts, no excuses. We were going to do it by the end of the year, on top of building better resilience in our serious crime departments, CID in particular, and our roads policing department, to bring all of those areas, which I see as the sharpest end of the sharp end, because everybody would argue they are front end in policing, but I see those as the sharpest end of the sharp end. I wanted all of those to be strong and resilient, particularly as we go into next summer. I can say with confidence that as a result of that work, and it's been very difficult work to collapse capabilities, move people, recruit at pace, bring in transferees, I can say that by the 31st of March or the 1st of April next year, we would have moved 121 officers back into uniform roles, filling vacancies that have existed there. And in addition to that, we will then place them in protection. And only those with mine or the deputy's personal endorsement will be allowed to leave patrolling neighbourhoods to go on and into other specialist roles. And that's not to undermine the value of the specialist roles. We offer diverse policing services across a whole range of risks in policing, ranging from antisocial behaviour, neighbourhood crime, shoplifting, right the way through to serious and organised crime, and from time to time counter-terror operations that touch the southwest. So it's a very complex picture, but I was absolutely determined that the most sensitive part of our business, the core offering that the public see and the public value the most, needed to be restored. And we've done that, and so we'll have 121 new officers back on the front line by the 1st of April. 71 of those officers will be there by Christmas. So the operation's underway, but we're through, and then the remainder will be there by the end of the calendar year. In addition to that, you'll be glad to know, and you've heard from me and the Commissioner before, we have additional funding this year. It's uncertain until we get our settlement whether that's going to continue into next year, but as part of the neighbourhood policing guarantee, the Safer Streets mission of the government, the Commissioner was given an additional £4.7 million this year, ring-fenced for neighbourhood policing, and we've decided to use that to employ a further 50 neighbourhood police officers and a further 50 PCSOs and a further 20 special constables to bolster the neighbourhood policing part of our business, which, when you add those two together, on the 1st of April, subject to the aggressive recruitment campaign that we're running currently, which I'll talk more about in a moment, people can expect to see, and my workforce will be able to see, 171 more officers on the front line that were on the front line on the 1st of August. That's a net uplift after we take account for those that are retiring and leaving. And I'm sure that whilst my officers remain sceptical that A, they're going to arrive, and B, it will make a difference, I'm absolutely confident that A, they will arrive, and B, it will make a difference to the resilience of the front end. In addition to that, I did make a nod in January to the rank review. I held a view, still hold a view, that Devon and Cornwall Police was too top heavy. There's too many senior officers, not enough frontline officers and staff, and undertook to remove 60 senior officers from ranks and replace those with constables on the front line. That work continues. We've started with the most senior. We've removed an ACC. We've removed 2 chief superintendents. We've removed 7 superintendents, and we've removed 10 or more chief inspectors and inspectors. And as we go into early next year, we are looking at the 650 sergeants, and we aim to take around about 30 or so sergeants from the model as well. So that's another, and that's an example and an illustration of how we are restoring the front line. So I'm delighted to say that remains on track. And I'll finish with a plea, really, is that we are recruiting at pace. Every year that we've been recruiting at pace since 2019, and every year we move forward, it gets slightly more difficult to recruit the best people that our public deserve to have in policing. And I think 3 years ago, I was told by my HR colleagues that for every one police officer that we deployed, we had 16 people that applied and had gone through rigorous vetting and the high standards that we demand. That's quite a hard case. So I'm making an appeal to everybody in the room and to our public to say we have brilliant people in Devon and Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, nearly 2 million of them. We do police from the community for the community, and I want the best people to come forward. We have vacancies for police officers, for PCSOs, for detention officers. We have multiple entry routes into policing. You can come in direct entry as a detective, you can come in and be a PCSO, you can work in our control centres, and you can expect to have a rewarding, relatively well paid, secure and exciting career, so that we're very much open for recruitment. So there's a bit of a pitch there. Apologies for that gratuitous sales pitch into our workforce, Chair. And I stop there and very happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chief Constable. And apologies for your second interruption today. Can I just ask all members, if you've got a mobile phone, can you please put it on silent while people are talking? So my first person is Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief Constable. I would volunteer for your recruitment, but I think my age and probably my height are both negative factors. But the serious point, and I welcome what you've just outlined to us. It's incredibly positive, I think, from where I sit, and I think from how residents see it. I recognise the point you've been making about reducing the number of your senior and middle rank officers. My two questions. One is, are you taking, if for every post that you remove out of your structure, are you converting that into money and therefore then using the money to purchase more PCs than you would be able to otherwise afford, or is it one in, one out? That's the first question. And secondly, so as you reduce your senior officer corps, you're potentially then increasing the span of control for them. And span of control is a key issue in having effective management, isn't it? And therefore, what challenge does that bring to you as you flatten your structure? Thank you.
Two very good questions. First of all, never say never. Devon and Cornwall welcomes everybody. We're a very inclusive organisation, and there is always a role for everybody with us. So never say never. One in, one out. So we've gone for ACCs, chief superintendents. Now, an ACC costs a great deal more than a constable. But I've also, in the background, I have some responsibilities to make some significant savings over the coming 4 years, the period of the MTFS, which is something you saw in January. What I'm able to do is to replace senior officers with a constable and cash out the difference as a saving. So it'd be one in, one out, and we cash the difference as part of our savings. That's part of the £2.2 million in-year savings that we've earmarked around workforce balance, and that was in the papers that members saw in January. So, so that's that. And then, in terms of span of command, you're absolutely right. If you have less leaders, then the ones that are left have more people to lead. What we did before we went into that, we didn't go into it completely blindly. We benchmarked across the UK. We were actually a high outlier in some of those ranks. So we had the ratio between constables and sergeants and constables and inspectors. We were high outliers. So we haven't even come down to the average yet. We've come down in between where we were and the average, which leaves me room next year to think again whether we go even further. So we remain a slightly high outlier, having removed some levels of rank. So I'm confident the span of command issue that you raise is something that we can absorb, but it is a factor and we will have to work that through in the delivery.
Okay, members, I have absolutely huge list. I've got you, Councillor Hackett, but Councillor German, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be succinct as requested. Two questions. Thank you for the report, Chief Officer. Very useful. I wasn't clear from the text or from your verbal report whether armed response officers are considered specialist or frontline, so would welcome clarity on that. And in terms of your sales pitch, can you describe some of the evidence base around assault on an emergency services person and how the CPS, is there evidence to suggest that the CPS have been consistently downgrading that? And if so, do you believe that that helps people to feel supported who are existing emergency services personnel and encourages people to apply if they were thinking of doing so? Thank you.
Yeah, I may. First of all, so the firearms officers are considered specialist, but they're not a luxury. We have to have specialist firearms officers available to protect the public against firearms threats and otherwise so dangerous threats. Doesn't mean they're not in scope to consider whether we have the right number, and we're currently going through a reassessment of the threat that firearms offences and knife offences and other very dangerous offending creates to ensure that we've got the right number of AFOs, authorised firearms officers, in our structure. They're very expensive, highly skilled. They have to have their highest levels of training in driving firearms. 1 week in 6, they're off the road, re-accredited. As you would expect, we cannot have firearms officers with automatic weapons on our streets without the highest possible levels of training and governance. So, but they're not part of the front line as I describe. The assault and emergency workers, the evidence I've got is that the CPS are not watering down the assault and emergency workers. In fact, the Crown Court judges tell me the opposite is happening. In meetings with our resident judge in Exeter recently, he did suggest that too many assault emergency workers were being elected for trial into the Crown Court. Because it's a trial but either way, defendants sometimes use the opportunity that they can elect for trial, which is a more costly or timely way of bringing justice. And the review of some in the judiciary is actually some of the assault emergency workers could actually remain in the magistrates' court, where magistrates have plenty of sort of sentencing powers to dispose of it. So we don't hear the opposite. So what I hear is the opposite of what you're concerned about.
So I have Gordon next.
Hi, Councillor Czapieski, Mid Devon. First of all, I'd like to compliment the Chief Constable on delivering what he committed to. Thank you. Questions I'm bringing to you, the more detail might come a bit later, but in principle, 2 questions, one on behalf of a colleague. Firstly, how do you feel hotspot policing is going, particularly in light of your comment about enhanced monitoring, with a view to how the information that's coming out is going to be fed back into the system? And secondly, the issue of flags, but particularly the liaison between the police and the local council. In the report, there's reference to the fact that the local councils hold figures and the police hold figures. My question pertains to how you feel, as the Chief Constable, that balance works so that we as members of the public and councillors actually get an overview rather than one view from the police and one view from the council. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And thanks for your kind feedback. Hotspot policing, last few years, it's been funded by a central grant allocated to Alison and then delivered through the force. We've been innovative in the way we've used it. more innovative than other forces. We are a national exemplar for the use of CSAS powers, community safety accreditation powers, and we delegate those more often than many other police forces, and we've used those CSAS officers alongside PCSOs and alongside police officers to provide visible hotspot policing in the identified hotspots. And they're controversial in some respects because the criteria of a hotspot is set by government, which means not everybody gets hotspot policing in their area from the funding. The announcements around police funding for next year are due imminently in the next few weeks. We'll find out during that time whether we're going to be funded for next year. If we're not funded, the Commissioner and I and the force will need to find a way to continue using hotspot policing within existing resources, which should be part of my rebuilding the front line to make sure we've got the resources to do it. Because having talked with Cambridge University, hotspot policing is an evidence base. We know it works if it's deployed properly within the way the studies show that it can generally bring down violence and antisocial behaviour in those high crime areas. So I'm a big fan. We'll have to find a way next year of funding that activity or mainstreaming it into our neighbourhood offering. But the flags issue, I think that's on the agenda in the next session under community cohesion. Whether chair is best dealt with there.
Okay, so we'll come back to the flag issue. I know it's in the next agenda, but I think some members were looking from an operational point of view, but we'll come back to that. Councillor Thomas.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Chair. I mean, Chief Constable, will you be here for the community cohesion section? I don't think you will. In which case, I'm afraid I'm going to. I'm going to be a politician, and I'm going to shoehorn it into the report. To be fair, because that's what we do, so that it makes sense. You know, I mean, the report talks about community-focused policing and increasing the number of PCSOs and PCs to do just that. I mean, which is great, and and I salute you for doing that. But community-focused policing at the moment. I am not here as the Cabinet Member of the Highways on the County Council, but I am nonetheless the Cabinet Member of the Highways on the County Council, and we have a significant problem in Exeter, for example. Now we're about to start the process of removing flags on street furniture. Just to be absolutely clear, we're not against patriotism and people flying flags on their own private flagpoles, but we cannot have them flown on street furniture, and we can't have any more emails from residents who are feeling intimidated by the fact that they're going up under the cover of darkness by people on flatbed trucks. Now, my question to you is clearly we need, I accept that these are civil matters. It's really hard to turn this into a criminal matter where it becomes the police action. But at the same time, community cohesion and community policing and the whole round involves ordinary people going out and removing those flags. They won't be, there'll be contractors who come in, and already the contractors are saying to us, we don't feel particularly safe about the idea of doing this because of the unrest that this really polemic issues cause. So I guess my appeal today to you, sir, is that we as politicians will do what the politicians have to do. We will employ people to take those flags down, but we really need a strong and robust message, both from the police and indeed from the Commissioner, that we're not against patriotism, but we cannot have people going around flying flags from street furniture for which they're not designed. And more importantly, I've got videos I could show you of chaps in balaclavas doing so under the cover of darkness. We don't need that in our society. What we need is more involvement from all of us and around on this table. And so, yes, sir, I will press you for an answer if I may.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's not for a Chief Constable to make comment on the debate that lies behind why people feel compelled to put flags on, and it's not for me. And my job, and the job of Devon and Cornwall Police, is to respect and uphold the law, respect positions and opinions on all sides, defend democracy, and be that difficult arbitrator between opposing views. And we are a very divided country at the moment. Everybody, that goes without saying, doesn't it? And we're a very divided country at the moment, and there are strong views on all sides. And it's for me to respect those and facilitate the public debate of those through, we have, as you well know, we have marches in Exeter this weekend. My job in those is not to comment on the causes on either side, but to ensure that people can go about their lawful business in Exeter, that people can exercise their rights to protest and assemble, and they do that peacefully, and make sure that they don't clash and we end up with disorder on our streets. So that's an obvious point you'd hear from a chief constable. In terms of the flags, I've been asked a number of times what about people painting flags on roundabouts or causing damage. Where people break the law, where people deface or break or damage and public property, then of course we'll record that, we'll investigate it, and if we can, we'll bring people to justice for it. The issue of flags on public lampposts and flyovers is a matter for the owners of that roadside furniture to remove, and if you have made a decision as a council to remove those, which is perfectly with a legitimate endeavour, then I suppose my undertaking to you is we will support you in making sure that your lawful activity is not disrupted by those who seek to undermine your lawful and legitimate right to remove flags if that's what you choose to do. So if it might be that I take your plea offline to ensure that the operation by the local authority is done in concert with local police, and we are aware of it, where the operation is taking place, so that we can ensure the safety of your operatives in undertaking lawful business.
Very grateful, thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that one. Okay, so Councillor Gray? And welcome, by the way. I should have said that at the beginning.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry I was late. I was at the wrong building apparently up the road, so and I got there at 9:30. So it was a long wait and a quick run down here to be 5 minutes late. Thank you, Chief Constable. I'm going to have to go home and check my front room because everything you've said near enough is what I have discussions with my wife. So I must congratulate you on what you're doing and what you've done. As an introduction, I'm Cornwall Councillor for Liskeard Central. I am actually an ex-policeman. I was in the Met in 1984, left in 86. That's a long story. In those days, things were different, and the respect for police was a lot different. To give you an example, I'm not to hijack the meeting, but in those days, Hammersmith was about the size of Liskeard, 1 mile square. And we would have 3 reliefs, 26 police officers per relief, 6 beat officers, and the rest taking up all other tasks. So I'm not going to compare Liskeard and ask for those sort of numbers. However, I must play catch up since I left the Met on do police officers, after they come out of Middlemore, as they came out of Hendon in those days, they don't anymore, do they still do 2 years probation? That's one question, quick question. A concern that we had in the Met back in 1984 was that many forces have started the graduate entry scheme, where graduates were afforded
So Gray, can I interrupt you? Sorry, we are so behind.
I am,
at
yeah,
the moment.
I'll
So
get to my
Can we
point.
just have a question?
Yeah.
And then the Chief Constable can answer that question. Just I would like everybody to have an opportunity. Thank you.
I'll get to my last point then. I think we need a meeting on our own, but my last point is you mentioned changing the force that you or change it from senior officers, and the way you're recruiting. A few years ago, Norfolk Police did a survey on their PCSOs, and he worked out through an accountancy consultancy that a PCSO, after many years, was costing them. It was costing them £1,500 a year more than a police officer. Would you ever consider following that lead? Thank you.
Let me deal with the 2 years probation. We have multiple entry routes into policing these days. You can come in as a direct entry detective. You can come in as a graduate and do a 2-year graduate programme. You can come in and do a degree apprenticeship, which takes 3 years. You can come in as just a normal entrant. Now, we've done away with the degree, the requirement to do a degree if you have other relevant qualifications and life experience. And we hope to attract more people in second careers into that. So multiple routes. Generally speaking, it's 2 or 3 years probation before you are a fully fledged police officer. We're committed to PCSOs. They do cost less than police officers. Police officers cost quite a bit more than PCSOs, and importantly, they do a very different job. And because of the stretch on policing, if you don't have PCSOs, then officers are continually taken away from the front line, continually given evidence in court, or being pulled up to other major events. Whereas PCSOs are grounded, rooted. They don't get taken away for other business, generally speaking. Of course, there's always an exception to that. So we're committed to those. We've got another 50 being recruited as we speak to bolster the numbers we have on the front line. They're valuable, the public love them. They do generally good problem-solving, visible, reassuring work. So I'm not sure what the situation in Norfolk is. Can't really speak for Norfolk. Thank you.
Chair, what I may add, just to help you, when I first took on this role back in 2016, police officers were paid around £18,000 a year. They're now paid £30,000 a year since the government's done continual improvements to their salary. They earn more now than a PCSO.
That was a note I was passed by the Treasurer to remind me that the starting salary of a police constable has now moved to just under 30,000 per year. That's quite a bit more than a PCSO, and that accelerates through the spinal scale relatively quickly. So it makes it a relatively well-paid job, and it's very different to a PCSO. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hodgeks, I can never pronounce your surname. I'm so sorry.
Councillor J will be all right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief Constable. Going back to Operation Resolve, my question is, has that been fully equality impact assessed? If yes, has that equality impact assessment thrown up any shortfalls for protected characteristic groups and vulnerable communities?
Can I produce an equality impact assessment? I'm not sure I can. I know there's lots of discussions around inclusivity. One of the problems with transferees, for instance, we are going to bring more transferees in next year than we have done for the last 5 years, because A, their instant capability, they are slightly more expensive than new recruits. And the other problem with, not problem with transferees, but the other unintended consequence of transferees, you get lots of young single men transferring, whereas people who've got more family ties, married couples, find it more difficult. So you naturally you move away from the growth of a more diverse workforce. So those are things we're considering. If I can take that away, and I'll drop you a note offline around the equality impact assessment of Operation Resolve, because I've not seen it, doesn't mean it's not there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, and I'd quickly like to pick up on that one before I go anywhere else, just with a comment that on your website, you say one of the ways you ensure your public sector equalities duty is by undertaking equality impact assessments. To start a programme without doing an equality impact assessment is actually in breach of what you've put out as the way you do your public sector equalities duty. I think you need to do an equalities impact assessment on Operation Resolve. You need to do it quickly, which takes me direct to my question, which I'm going to ask now rather than in the next bit, because it does relate to the next bit. There is a lot of rumour going around that one of the specialist teams you are closing down is the diverse communities team. Is that right? Yes or no?
So the first point, I accept the challenge on equality impact statement. Really good point. I've committed to do is find out. I don't know is the brutally honest answer. I've not read that, and Jim Colwell may well put that in my hand this afternoon, I hope. If not, we'll make sure it's done urgently. I haven't signed off a decision on the diverse communities teams as yet. Everything is in scope, but that's not a decision that's been made yet.
Just so you're aware, at the event you hosted recently, you might not have said it. It was being said by members of your staff at individual tables that team was being closed down, and has caused disquiet amongst a wide variety of communities.
As I said earlier, this is excruciatingly difficult to do. It sounds really easy for a chief constable to say, I'm going to put 100+ people back on the front line. When it comes to which teams you decide to disband, everybody has a really powerful argument for why they shouldn't go back to patrol. Because we're moving at pace, the communication lags behind that, and there is lots of gossip and rumour and fear in the force, and quite understandably amongst really good people that are worried about their future. So I would say that was probably gossip and conjecture at this time. I can say for certain today, unless Jim Colwell's, I'm pretty sure he's not in a meeting today, has made a decision today that hasn't been decided yet. So and with those kind of capabilities, even if they were disbanded, I would only accept them to be disbanded if the capability was embedded back in the neighbourhood teams that we are building as a result. But again, that decision's not been made.
Okay, all right. Can I just remind members, we are on item 5. I don't want to try and go to the next item. So I've got Councillor Hackett. I've still got a huge list, and I'm really concerned about the time. So can we just? It's a question, not a statement, please.
Thank you, Chair. I represent Torridge, where Bideford is, and I really do welcome what you say about PCSOs, but we started with 300 odd when I came in. We've got a long way to go. We receive money for street marshals. Our acquisitive crime is going in the wrong direction, and at the last CSP meeting, shoplifting is right off the scale. We've invited the Police and Crime Commissioner to come up. For 2 years, has not turned up, apart from electioneering. My question is, will you guarantee that we will keep our street marshals? We so desperately need them. Or if you're taking away the funding for them, which is the concern that our council have, will you guarantee that we will have, on a like-for-like basis, a number of PCSOs to reinforce what we already consider a depleted force in Bideford?
I'll take the first part of that question. The first thing is, in light of the announcement this week of the abolishment of police and crime commissioners, I personally cannot guarantee anything going forward at the moment other than trying to continue with business as usual. At the moment, without the police settlement that's happened, we don't know what that looks like, whether there'll be cuts, whether there'll be huge hikes in council tax. At the moment, we don't know what is planned. So I can't reassure you on the street marshal's side of things, because that gets funded via my office, not through the chief constable. But I'll let the chief answer to you about PCSOs.
I would hope that we can find a way to continue to fund street marshals. As I said earlier, I really value this mixed economy of PCSOs, street marshals, town centre officers, all with CSAS powers that do great work for all of us in that community safety space. It'd be really dangerous for me to guarantee anything around resourcing to individual councillors at this point. I'm truly committed to restoring the front line of policing and neighbourhood policing. If you feel things aren't working well in Bideford, I'm happy to have that conversation offline. You have got an exceptional LPA commander in Emma Butler-Jones for North Devon. She is a force of nature. And I'm sure if she's not aware of issues in Bideford, she will be by the end of the day. So, thank you.
She is aware of issues in Bideford, and I'm coming to you as the politician to say, I would welcome you to come up, but I don't want to see that if street marshals disappeared, we would have a net decrease. Can we ensure that we go upwards or level, certainly not down? Thank you very much.
I think Councillor Hackett, I think you know, the Chief Constable and the Commissioner has already explained, until they see what's in front of them with their policing settlement, they can't make a promise. And I think that's the right thing to do. Do not sit here and make promises if they can't keep them. So let's see what comes out in the budget review. I'm going to move on to Vice Chair next, please.
Mine's hopefully a little quick question, and again, thank you, Chief Constable, for good news. I always like good news. Just a quick question around geographical spread of these new officers. Obviously, I come from a rural patch, North Cornwall, which always struggles with neighbourhood teams generally, I think. So, 121 that you originally talked about, is there sort of, are you allocating them certain areas, or are they all going to be sort of centred on hotspots, as we're calling them? Thank you.
They're going to go to where we've already decided to have design. So these are restoring true vacancies in areas. So we hope to get everybody back to what we've promised that you should have. And that's the promise. So there's no priority, you know, we are putting them back. When you post an officer from a back office function or department to a frontline role, what I don't want to do is post them 100 miles from their home. So there is the priorities will be based on who can go back the quickest in accordance to what is reasonable in terms of travel. But there's no kind of priority list or plan. We'll have them all back by the end of the year, which gives you the design that you deserve.
Thank you. And finally, Barry.
Quick question. Which specialist roles were you taking people from? I mean, bearing in mind that there's an issue about investigations. You mentioned CID being the sharp end. And of course, you need the right people in CID, not just people. So what areas are you taking people from?
Not from CID, you'll be glad to hear. We have too few detectives as it is, and we also have a plan to grow our capability around serious crime over the next year, which has been subject to scrutiny by the Commissioner and part of the Assurance Board work. I'll give you some examples. We have what was called the Prevent and Detect team that would do an Operation Servitor patrols. We've been using them for other ad hoc work for the last 2 years. As a sergeant in 10, we've disbanded that team, and those officers have been asked to go back. We had a no excuses team that were doing enhanced work around road policing. What I've asked them to do is to go back to be part of the core traffic and serious collision team. What we call the level 1, the PIP 1, the professionalising and policing, PIP 1 officers in some of the proactive areas of policing have been asked to go back to patrol. Those are the kind of places. We have a force support group. We have 9 support groups across the 2 counties. We are looking whether we can live with less of those. There's a really important point here, which is Operation Resolve comes in 3 phases. There's the early stability piece, there's the sustainability piece, and then there's the strengthening piece. One of the things we've not been able to do as a police force for a number of years is build capability against new threats. Every year, my senior people say to me, we could do with a team to deal with cyber. We could do with a team to deal with this particular new and emerging threat. And we haven't been able to find those resources unless we go for growth. And there is no growth, is there? So therefore, when we've disbanded some of these specialist teams, the people in the teams go to the front line to fill vacancies, and we cash the posts into a reserve for future deployment. So it's a double benefit. I hope that's a flavour of the kind of places we're looking.
Sorry, I meant to ask, are you staying for the custody review? You're not?
No, I think I need to be away about 12, I think.
Could I just ask you a quick question then? So investigations...
Can I just add on to the last question, Mr Jones, just to say, and to reassure panel, is the Chief is making some really difficult decisions to put officers on the front line, and I know you'll all believe that to be the right thing to be doing. One of the ways in which we are working together on this is that it's about identifying the risk appetite that the force is willing to take in terms of its operational risk, and whether or not I feel comfortable to support the Chief Constable in that. And right now, how we've been working together is I am. So that just so you're aware, it's all about the risk appetite. If you don't want to take a risk, you wouldn't change a thing. And that's the easiest thing to do. And that's what many chief constables have done up and down the country and even in this force. And Chief Constable Vaughan is taking a great leadership challenge here, you know, upsetting some of the officers who do not wish to be doing those roles back on the front line, to encourage them and support them to go by the side of their officers, their colleagues that need the help. So it's really important that we do need to support the Chief Constable in taking this bold decision to get more officers back to where they should be, and not distracted with other business. So I just wanted to reassure you around that.
I'm more than happy for you to, very briefly, because I know what the question is you want to ask. It is on item 1.2, if you want to mention about the custody. But can we be very brief, because I know the Chief Constable does need to shoot off, really.
I can see that by moving the custody suite to Exeter, that would involve moving the detectives to Exeter, so that you could create a hub in Exeter. But what I'm asking is that the best way of doing it? There's discrepancy between the figures you're using and the figures in the press that the local law personnel are using. So are you prepared to sort of share your workings out with the Commissioner, who can sort of be the arbiter between, because it's a large scale move. I mean, I know this is all doable because you do it in like small places into Exeter, but it's a large scale move.
I'm trying to be really clear and really succinct at the same time. First of all, we haven't made any decisions around custody yet. Secondly, the Commissioner, I have felt the hand of accountability probably stronger on this issue than any other since I've been here. So you can be reassured that this is something that's being done alongside and collaborative with the Commissioner. It's an operational decision for me, and we're being given close and careful scrutiny. The third thing is, I don't think we can stand still. We have 6 custody centres across the county. They don't deliver the kind of policing that the public want. They're an operational tool for me. Arresting people, arresting criminals is a good thing, and we have to detain them safely. But it is an overhead for the force. 6 custody centres are very expensive to detain people, often with very complex needs in detention. Has to be done to a very, very high standard. We're inspected every year around that. And to maintain 6 custody centres, I will have to go to the Commissioner in the next year or so and seek to spend multiple millions of pounds of maintenance work to keep our custody centres where they are. Before I do that, I have to be sure that I can't operate with less custody centres. Because every pound of taxpayers' money, I would rather every pound was focused on the thing the public value, which is frontline visible policing and safe, secure, protected services behind. So we're in a process of examining, and we are undertaking a review to see if there's any opportunities to do things differently. The Commissioner's asked me for a detailed stakeholder management plan, so that everybody involved and affected can be consulted or engaged, not consulted, that's for later, and to come up with a media plan and to come up with an evaluation strategy. So we gather the right data. If we choose to pilot the closure of a custody centre, that we do that objectively, we gather data properly and objectively with the scrutiny the Commissioner brings, and then we probably would go to consultation around whether it is a really big decision. My overriding desire is to restore the front line of policing. If we can have safe and effective custody provision in 5 or 4 centres rather than 6, and that means I can put 5 more officers on the streets of Torquay, Plymouth, Exeter, then that's worth the work. But it's not a decision we've made yet. I think it's fair to say I'm under intense scrutiny from the Commissioner, because there's a whole range of small p political and other considerations around a big decision like that. So we're not taking it lightly, and we're in that process. Did you want to add anything?
The one thing to add is actually, just so you're aware, we are going to be meeting with legal aid, defence solicitors. We're just trying to find a date in the diary. We are not unwilling to engage with anyone, and we want to make sure it's evaluated well. So if it doesn't work, just so you know, just one of my red lines is I don't want to see less arrests happen. because of it. So that's the first red line. And there'll be a number that we are just working through at the moment if we move to a pilot closure to see. Just so you're aware, in Avon and Somerset, I think they've got 2 custody centres in Avon and Somerset, quite similar sort of size geography to ours, and they've only got 1 sexual assault referral centre, which is in Bristol. Everywhere else has got a lot less than us, and our geography lends us to having more, but we don't get more funding for it. It doesn't get recognised in the funding formula, and we have to work through ways in which to make sure we get value for money for what we do have.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, I've not picked up any recommendations through that item. Was there anything that anybody wanted to bring forward? Councillor Penberthy?
Obviously, we've been talking to the Chief Constable rather than necessarily picking up things in the Commissioner's report. Are we doing the Commissioner's report separately? Or I'm just conscious we've got a lot on, and there's probably, whatever we do now, there's going to be bits that are not going to come up in the agenda because we're not going to have time to.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, we've hit a bit of a crisis this morning. I'm just looking at item 5. We will move on to item 6. Okay, so item 5 only.
Just quickly on item 5 then. Your discussion here about VORG and the partnerships, you don't talk at all about community safety partnerships or local authorities. It sounds like you're just going ahead and doing what you want to do on VORG.
Looking for a recommendation,
So
Councillor
I wondered whether there is something that we need to see about the work of the Police and Crime Commissioner on VORG in partnership with statutory bodies, not just with the voluntary community sector, the police, and doing whatever you want, which is fine. So there just seems to be a big missing bit of what you've got on VORG in your report.
Chair, just to be clear, my focus is on disrupting violence against women and girls. It may not be police, it may not be council, it may not even be voluntary sector at this point. We are working through what that disruption looks like. So it isn't about just liaising with the statutory agencies. This is about how do we stop violence against women and girls and disrupt and particularly focus on the perpetrators. And it's unlikely that at the moment, they've been invited to workshops, but unlikely at the moment that I'm just going to go through a statutory body to come up with disruption. So I will happily bring a report to you about some of those very strategic elements that we're looking to potentially invest in that's come out of our work so far.
Okay. No. A recommendation along your very brief, Councillor Hackett.
Right, recommendation. We welcome what we've heard this morning, but in light of the fact that we do not know where these officers are going to be apportioned, can we come back and do a deep dive at a separate meeting and look at where these officers are going to be placed so that we ensure that existing resources are maintained at the appropriate level or improved? Because if you take 120 officers, 121, you divide them out through the whole area, it's not very many officers.
No, that's fine. It's something we can look at the precept. Okay? That's
okay.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
We deep dive it.
Yep, not a problem.
Thank you.
Can I thank the Chief Constable for attending today. It's always a pleasure to see you at the panel. And once again, please accept my apologies for running over and having to interrupt you earlier on. I do apologise. Have a safe journey back. Thank you. Panel members, I'm going to, and Commissioner, I'm going to move straight on to item 6, and I'm going to go straight to questions. The Commissioner has obviously given the report, and I would hope that everyone's read it. So, Councillor Penberthy is the first hand I can see.
Thank you, and I just quickly want to say thank you for the report. I've asked for some input from some key people across Plymouth, like our community builders and others. So actually I've got a load here, which I'm not going to be able to cover all of. But the first thing I wanted to pick up on was you said that the public sector equality duty was updated each year, and we had a chance to look at it at budget. That's what you said in the last meeting when I asked you about it. I did a check. The last public sector equality duty statement on the police, it's what you said at the last meeting, and so I did a little piece of work. On your website, you have not got a public sector equality duty statement from the Police and Crime Commissioner. All there is an equality and opportunity to diversity policy dated 2014, which says it's requires an EAO from the OPCC perspective. And so I went to the police website. The last public sector equality duty is the statement in 2022. It says there's a report on 2024, but that's not visible. So at that very base level, it looks bad. And what I've got is feedback on lots of things where what you say looks nice, but as soon as people start delving underneath it, that's not the case. I wanted to make that very clear that people are really unhappy. So third-party reporting centres is my first point of call, because that is on the public sector equality duty as something you will do. I have been told, and I've got a whole load here from the third-party reporting centres in Plymouth, that since you've changed to online reporting, there is no drop-down to allow that report to be from a third-party reporting centre. So there is no way for that to be tracked or for that to be properly managed. So on those very base levels, but third-party reporting centres are feeling sidelined, and they're actually saying they don't think that the reports they're making matter, and they're having to try and convince people to make reports anyway. So just on that very basic, you said you do it in your public sector equality duty, it's not working, you're saying things are looking good, and hate crime is rising by a faster rate than crime in the patch, and that's worrying. So just on that very early bit, I think that your report, whilst sounding nice, is probably not based in the reality of most people in most of our communities. And that's what I'm picking up. There are a lot of people who are saying they don't trust the police, they don't trust the processes, the police don't understand them, and that therefore they are facing difficulties. And that's on hate crime before you move to cohesion, before you move to antisocial behaviour. And so the real base levels. So we need to have something that is grounded more in the reality of communities. And actually at the moment, what I'm getting back when I talk to anyone is the police are closing down the equalities teams, the diverse communities teams. They don't really care about us, and actually they don't really care about how we feel. That is emphasised in the way you start your report by putting transgender people as a problem, not a protected characteristic. So, Police and Crime Commissioner, I'd ask you go away, rewrite this, and we come back at a future meeting with something that actually looks more like the lived experience of communities across the patch.
I completely agree.
Chair, if I may, one of the reasons why these reports here have been rushed is because we had 2 weeks' notice in which to produce them for this meeting. You may say 2 weeks is a long time, but it isn't. That's when we had the agenda setting meeting. We had 2 weeks to get these reports produced. So I do apologise if they're not of the quality that you would expect. No, the agenda setting meeting did not happen until 3 weeks before this meeting was taking place. I want to be really clear with you about that, because my team have had to rush the reports to get them to you for this. So I will just state that. The second thing I will state, and I will apologise for the state of my website, about 4 months ago and 6 months ago, we had a major breach on our website, and all of our documents, our entire history of all the documents that were on that website were lost. And we have been rebuilding it and trying to establish exactly what's missing. So I apologise that some of my website is not up to date from the office perspective. It's one of the things since the new head of comms has been appointed is his role to sort out that problem. But I really do apologise that it does look and you can't find, and I can't find, information that is really important on there. Just in terms of your concerns from the communities that you've reached out to, Councillor Penberthy, I'm more than happy and willing to speak to any of those personally and understand what those issues, particularly with the third-party reporting centres. So the issue about online reporting at the moment is that it is a national website, it is a national policy by which we run the online reporting through policing. So all police forces at the moment, as far as I'm aware, are doing exactly the same because we've all got the same single online home website with the same policies attached to it. So, but I'm more than happy to have a look at what those issues are around third-party reporting centres. And also, I think the challenge around communities not being reflected. One of the things that this police force has done very well under the leadership of Jim Colwell as the Deputy Chief Constable is establish the Community Scrutiny Panel. And I don't know if you've been attending to the conferences of those or the panels that scrutinise all of the stop and search, all of the stuff that policing are doing. It is hugely diverse. It is hugely representative of our communities, and they have hundreds of members attached to this community scrutiny panel, and it is run by the community. Reverend Nathan Kiagi, who is the Dean of Torbay, is actually the leader who has set up a very transparent website about how communities can build confidence or not in the scrutiny that they are seeing through the work that they do. I would strongly recommend the communities access the Devon and Cornwall Community Scrutiny website and see the work that is going on, and directly, if they wish, to engage with that panel to make requests of what they think should be looked at if it's not being looked at the moment. Reverend Nathan has been an amazing individual leading a really robust scrutiny process, and the force gives a wealth of resources, some more than I get for some of my scrutiny of the work that I do, the wealth of resources that the force give to support that panel to function well. So I just wanted to reassure you that we have many people ensuring that the police are doing the right thing on some of those areas. But again, it'd be useful for people to engage with that website, and we'll send that link out, Chair, if that's okay, after this meeting to panel members.
Okay. Commissioner, can I just pick up the start of it? The request was from the last meeting, so your team would have already know it was coming, what we're discussing. And yes, we did meet on the 16th of October. The agenda setting is with myself and Vice Chair and your team, and it is trying to get everyone's diary together, but it was 3 weeks. I'm going to stick on about the report, and I would like, this is a question from myself now, page 37 of your report, item 4.5, it states for members who are watching us, the Commissioner also offered funding to Plymouth City Council following the riots to provide restorative justice approach for the city. But this was not taken up. We do seem to have a little bit of a problem between maybe Plymouth City Council and your own team, because when I read this report, I was not happy that there was funding there and we hadn't took it up. So after a very long search, officers went away and we was not offered any funding. Okay, so there seems to be a bit of a communication. So that probably needs to be rechanged in your report, Commissioner. All right.
Thank you, Chair. I think what the offer was to fund a service to deliver restorative justice post the riots to those that had been arrested. So rather than provide funding to the City Council, it was funding to provide a service for the City Council.
And that would
so
have
apologies for that wording being incorrect.
Not a problem, but that would have come from Make Amends, and that's what I'm being told, and no one received. We've not heard nothing from the team.
So if I can provide some clarity, Chair, actually the offer came directly from me, and there were several meetings between me and representatives from the offices of Plymouth City Council. A draft outline report was prepared and sent to the officers, but it was not taken forward. I think there were other matters going on in Plymouth at the time, but the offer came directly from me, so it's not the office. So I can guarantee that there were at least 2 meetings that I can recall and an exchange of emails.
Well, thank you for that, Fran. Could we take away from this meeting a dialogue of some evidence of that? Because I would like to obviously take that up. If there is funding, I'm always, at the front of the queue, as the Commissioner will know, for funding. So I would hate for anyone to lose out on that. But let's take that offline.
Happy to have a conversation
and let's get that
afterwards.
resolved. Thank you. So I have Councillor Lever next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. I'm just going to, I'll be as brief as humanly possible because I know we're running behind. Section 2 on page 32 and then 33, I'm just looking at the numbers of recorded instances of hate crime, and we're seeing an upward trend as well, with a little bit of a drop in 22 and 23. Anecdotally, I hear there's quite a lot going on. I don't know how much of what goes on is reported, as none of us do, but I'm really aware that in the last few months, last 6 months, say, that there have been increasing community tensions, and I think going back to the flag issue, that I think has polarised views. And I just wondered, have we got any figures for the first 6 months of this year yet to actually see what is going on in terms of the trends?
Thank you, Councillor Lever. I don't have those in front of me, but from my awareness in just discussions of what we've been talking about with the force, is what will tend to happen is when there is a national conversation, whether that's through the media or politicians, we have a spike. When we have a spike, it links to, I think I brought you to the previous hate crime scrutiny report that I brought to panel maybe last year or the year before. And they have identified police forces across the country nationally that when there is national conversations that are about particularly contentious issues, there tends to be a spike in hate crime, whether that's against transgender people or whether that's against our diverse communities. That it does link to national, which is why our words really do matter, and our job locally is to ensure that we can help ease those community tensions. So I can tell you the link seems to be there, that whenever there's something national or, but also I want to just say that people who do report crime, if you remember, they will be taken seriously if they report hate crime. Don't forget, a hate crime is somebody having a crime, an offence committed against them, and it's aggravated because of who they are. It's classified as an aggravated offence because they've been targeted because of who they are. So a crime has to occur. And there's been a lot of conversation recently about the non-crime hate incidents, whether they're being reported or investigated, and the Met Police have chosen not to investigate. But I'll be really clear that every force is still recording those incidents. This is about identifying early where there are issues in our communities that may not quite yet be a crime, may be someone who has been, feels intimidated or something has happened. It is an alert to the police, an early warning sign. So again, just to reassure panel that at the moment, all police forces will continue to record non-crime hate incidents, as it is an early indicator of things that may be happening in our communities.
Thank you. Councillor Joe.
Thank you. And thank you for your report. You spend quite a lot of time talking about hate crime in that report, and yet hate crime isn't one of your priorities. I'm wondering whether it ought to be, and whether there's an opportunity to revisit those priorities. As we discussed earlier, I've been an independent advisor to Devon and Cornwall Police for over 15 years, and we have spent an awful lot of time discussing the barriers that people face in reporting hate crime without coming up with any solutions to those barriers. And I think it's time to really drill down into what those barriers are. And, you know, I think with some of the issues that are going on, little concern there about no equality impact assessments on quite radical changes. Yeah, I've probably said enough.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hodgetts, just to say, I mean, it's a really good point that you make about lots of talk about it, but no solutions come to. Now, whether or not that's because it's too difficult to come up with a solution, or we haven't actually spent enough time thinking about the solutions and more about scrutinising and thinking about whether people are reporting hate crime as the focus rather than actually what some of the solutions are. I will go away and have a think about that on the back of your thoughts. Just to say, I don't want to alarm you that the Chief has not got an equality impact assessment on the work that's been done. I think he may not have been aware or not. He hasn't seen his eyes on it because it hasn't been alerted to him that there is a concern that he needs to be worried about. So I want to reassure you that it's highly likely, because Mike Stamp, the head of legal, is always adamant about ensuring we've got really clear equality impact assessments. It's one of his key functions to do. So I don't want you to go away assuming that we haven't. I can't say whether they have or haven't because the Chief can't either, but I just want to reassure you that it's not because it's definitely not been done at this point.
Yeah, thank you for that. clarification on that one. It's just I also know that with the online home national website, that wasn't properly equality impact assessed, and that's how quite a lot of tweaking has had to take place because that wasn't done properly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Recommendations, Councillor Penberthier, did you say that you had a recommendation that you wanted the report to come back?
There was another point I wanted to raise as well, because I wanted to pick up on your talking about engagement with members, and I think there's a recommendation that might come out of that, because a lot of your report talks about engagement with members, so an engagement with ward members as well as others. I would hasten to say that there's a lot of protests happening in my ward. I don't get engaged with the police on most of them. In fact, when the Orange Order was marching, it was me who told the local policing that it was done, despite the fact it had already been risk assessed by Middlemore. And what Middlemore didn't know was the march was walking past the front door of a Catholic church. So the council had gone in and done the prevention stuff, because actually the local teams didn't know that this march had been risk assessed in terms of the teams on the ground. So I think you need to get better at those local engagements on matters of community cohesion, because they do cross responsibilities and we do need to be working together, and quite often it's ward members. So can we have a recommendation, Chair, to look into the relationship in terms of ward members, authorities, community safety partnerships and the police in matters like this, because we often have the intelligence, and I think what I spotted on this report is the intelligence is missing, and I think that might be one of the key links, that we haven't got it right in terms of those links across. There's probably some areas which are more likely to have ward members engaged than others.
Chair, if I may, just to assist as well, one of the schemes that I have is the councillor advocate scheme, that any councillor of any position, of any party can join, and it creates a very close relationship with your local inspector. Some areas do it slightly differently just because they like to do it slightly differently, but we do have a very clear route for councillor advocates to request direct to my office for information, direct to the inspector as well. So just to flag that we have a scheme that enables councillors direct access. What I will share with you is we've had about 60 protests a month in policing, largely small. We've had a few large ones, but then some of them are quite small. So the police will only tend to really proactively brief if they have concerns about things. So the recent protests in Exeter, briefing with the MP, briefing with the leader of the council, making sure people were really aware to allay those concerns about what intelligence the police had, and it allows an exchange of intelligence between the two. So what I will say, it's probably a bit of horses for courses. I'm not sure everyone would require the same amount of management by the police. Otherwise, I think that might be all they're doing. But obviously, very happy to take intelligence from councillors to support what's happening. And I've had nothing but praise from local policing teams in Exeter in how they've been liaising with local councillors when there's been protests on, to fact check what's true and what's not, and it's been working really well in Exeter. Perhaps that may not have been the case so much in Plymouth, I don't know, but I can't believe that to be true about Plymouth.
Okay, thank you. I know other people wanted to ask questions. I am very concerned about the time. It's pointless having the meeting if the commissioner's not here. So let's use our time. I'm going to move on to item 7. Again, I'm going to take it that panel members have read the Commissioner's report, and I will open it up for questions, please. Councillor Hackett.
Thank you very much, Chair. I read the report with a degree of astonishment, actually, about firearms. Our local MP, Geoffrey Cox, had a meeting with farmers at the election time, and it was a resounding issue that the firearms licences were suffering a considerable delay. And I've heard anecdotally that a gun dealer in the west of Exeter area had a massive store of guns that had to be deposited there because there was a lack of licences being issued. Now, would I be right in thinking that that backlog has been reduced? And if I was to contact that gun dealer, that his storeroom would now be empty?
Chairman, what I will say is, Councillor Hackett, in light of those incidences that you talk about, when people are going for a renewal of a licence, 88% are completed within the statutory time period that is set. I don't think that's particularly poor performance. I have scrutinised this at Commissioners Accountability Board, and I am assured that they are doing their utmost to ensure that renewals, which are the higher risk because they already own a gun, and therefore there's more risk if they haven't got a renewed licence. The fact that a new grant, though, for a licence, only 55% are done within the statutory time frame. So the people who should be more annoyed is somebody who wants one who has not had one before within Devon and Cornwall. But again, I was part assured on what they're doing around the performance in that space. The biggest step change that we've got, and that we were monitored by the policing minister in the past, is around the issuing of temporary licences. And we do not issue any temporary licences at all now, and we were at the point of issuing hundreds of them as a way of overcoming not renewing a licence quick enough. So there's been a massive step change in the way that the team perform. I can prepare you that it's likely that this will become a national service at some point. The government's change with the abolishment of our roles and the centralisation of what's going to be happening is, I think this will be a national programme of firearms licences. So there will be changes afoot. So I am more reassured about that, Councillor Hackett. What I would say is, if you or anyone you know is perturbed about a length of time that they are waiting, they are welcome to contact my office while I'm here, and I will assist with them to find out where their application is. They are more complicated now. They do have to wait for letters from GPs and things like that that have changed slightly, and now we've got all the new guidance that you can see that is quite lengthy. But again, I'm assured that at the moment, out of those 71 guidance changes, 46 have already been implemented in Devon and Cornwall Police.
Okay, can I just confirm that Sir Geoffrey Cox has been in contact with you about a number of issues that he picked up at the election?
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor Hackett. And I usually do get informed when any elected person contacts my office and wants some assistance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Penberthy, please.
Yeah, just a quick one. Commissioner, over quite a lot of meetings now, we've been asking for how much does it cost to process a firearms licence application. I wouldn't have thought it was rocket science to work that out. I know there have been changes. It would be useful to know how much it would have cost before the changes came in order for us to be able to do it. Our gut feeling, and you've shared this, is that actually it costs more for the police to process a firearms application. Now, in other areas of statutory licensing, we're able to charge full cost recovery and set licensing rates. It would be really helpful to understand what it costs Devon and Cornwall Police to process an application compared to the income they generate, because we should be lobbying, and we can't help you lobby if we don't have. And we've been offering to do the lobbying, but you're still not giving us the bullets to load in our gun, to fire at the government, to ask for your ability to charge what it costs in order that you don't have to spend money that should be spent on policing and processing licence applications, because that's what it comes down to. So if we can have that money, that cost, and so on, so we get that analysis, we could do something to help you, but we're still waiting for it. I've asked for it on lots of meetings, so this isn't the first time I've asked for that. Thank you.
Chairman, just to be really clear, this briefing note has been produced by the questions that that's why it's a briefing note. It's to answer the questions that my office was specifically asked. So I apologise if that question was asked and we've missed it, but I believe these were the questions that my office was asked for the answer to, and that one wasn't. So I apologise if that's what was expected and it got lost in translation. Just to let you know that the cost of the firearms licensing and explosives unit, don't forget they deal with explosives and licensing of those things as well, 43% of the total cost is covered by the income of the fees. So you can see it's 67, I'm using my maths in my head here, 57% that isn't. But that doesn't include the cost of police officers that are also working in the department, because they're already it's an opportunity cost that we lose there. So there is an opportunity to consider it. It's £2.3 million, the cost of the police staff in the department. So there is an opportunity. But as I said, I was on a meeting last night about police efficiency, looking at the national changes that may come. Firearms licensing is on that list. So I think they're going to be working at pace around some of this. And they probably should, because on the Prevention of Future Deaths report, after the inquest of Keyham, it was recommended actually that a national system should be established.
Okay, Councillor Mandy.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that we did lobby really hard, and a couple of years ago, because my proudest thing is when I requested as a new member that temporary licences should be abolished, and to hear they have is I have been of some use on this group. But we did lobby, the fees did go up, but I do agree with Councillor Penberthy, but actually we should be lobbying again to get that money increased, because I know I'm sat next to my dear friend here who used to hold a shotgun licence, that actually they are more for, yes, working on farms, but a lot of them are for pleasure. And maybe the people who want them for working with a farm pay one set fee, and people who want them to go clay pigeon shooting, etc., pay a different fee, and it's a higher fee. I think there is that disparity that could be looked at now, that to make it fairer in the system, because I don't want farmers to feel penalised and charged more when actually they're doing good with what they do. It's people who have them for leisure and other uses that should be paying a higher fee. Thank you.
Chairman, may I thank you and other panel members who did help lobby on making the changes of the fee increase. It was what shall I say, for our rural areas to be saying that you wanted to increase costs to our rural businesses was a tricky one, and we've achieved it. I am a bit reticent, though, about full cost recovery, because I do know that we're not the most efficient department. When you look at British Association of Shooting and Conservation, who do an annual report, or it's every 2-year report, where they do freedom of information requests to forces about their timeliness, their costs, and all things like that. We aren't one of the cheapest. So full cost recovery says there's still efficiencies to be made, rather than letting an inefficient service be charged at full cost, but I'm happy to take more.
Okay, so maybe that's a recommendation we could come back with, Jake, to support the Commissioner. I know there was other people on the list. I do want to move on. We've still got quite a lot left on the agenda. So I'm actually, thank you for that, Commissioner. I'm going to move on to item 8 now, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner's Performance Report. Again, I'm going to take it that members have read this, and could we go straight into questions, please? Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Crime data integrity. To make it short, would the Commissioner, when crime and data integrity improves so that it meets a better assessment by the HMIC, would the Commissioner ask the Chief Constable if he will go back over those crimes that have been reported to police, where the police have recorded it not as a crime but as an inquiry? Would those, for serious offences, not trivial, would they be looked at again?
Chair, what I can say about crime data integrity is it is a lengthy bureaucratic process that takes an awful lot of resources to reach the 95% target of full confidence. It sounds simple that you ring the police, your crime's recorded, Bob's your uncle. No, it isn't.
No, can I just say there are crime recording standards?
Yes,
So
yes.
those standards have not been met, and they've recorded it as an inquiry.
One of the things that happens is a regular auditing of crime data integrity outside of the HMIC FRS inspections, so that there is a check on what has and hasn't been recorded, and particularly looking at the more serious cases. Antisocial behaviour is one that they were not very good at, and some of the serious violence cases they weren't very good at. And it's because there are multiple reasons why. Sometimes people are talking about 3 offences and sometimes they might have only recorded 2 if it's all at the same time. So there are some challenges about how you get people to get this right. So what I will say is there is regular deep dive audits by the crime data registrar, who sits as an independent person within Devon and Cornwall Police, reporting to the Deputy Chief Constable around how crime data integrity is working for us. So they're able to see where it's working and not working, and they are recording those crimes that they identify that haven't been recorded.
So that would be, this registrar would be looking at crimes and maybe adding further crimes to it. What about crimes that have been recorded by the police as an inquiry? So may not be on the database of crimes.
I can't answer that question, Chairman, as it's an operational question. I'm trying to give you the strategic intent question around how the Chief is put resources into an area that needed improvement. Inexperienced officers on the front line. I can tell you some of the challenges is somebody is telling you about a crime face to face, but they might tell you about a crime that was historic at the same time they're telling you, and I mean 10 years ago, and they're telling you a crime that's just happened now. Sometimes the police officers neglect to record the historic crime correctly. So they have to be hyper alert listening, and these are the sorts of things of how you get to 95% confidence of crime recording. So it's about being able to record everything that you're told, not just the crime that you're dealing with today to investigate. So I can't answer the question in terms of detail about what you're talking about with inquiries.
So would you be asking the Chief Constable whether they would look into serious offences that are being recorded as an inquiry?
I'm satisfied.
Very, very straightforward.
No, I'm satisfied with the way at the moment, and so is HMIC FRS in the way in which the force deep dives, checks. The crime registrar works full time as a crime registrar, supporting and enabling police officers to be trained and understand how to record crime properly, and doing the regular audits. That is the best way that all forces do it at the moment. So I wouldn't be asking him to do more than he is expected to do by the inspectorate at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. Gordon, please.
Thank you. Gordon Czapieski, Mid-Devon. My question sort of follows on to a certain extent, is the itemisation and make sure that we have reports on, I was just going to say ASBs, because I think the reporting of ASBs is too general. It covers a very wide range of articles. I think on the 3rd of September you said that there would be a report coming forward at a future meeting to look at the ASB in more depth. Keen to see that is, and if it is in the pipeline, be good to know when it is. The reason I ask is there's been fluctuations about the level of reporting, and I'm a firm believer that if we have good, meaningful reports and statistics, it will help not only us and yourselves to analyse the incidents and make plans going forward, but will encourage members of the public to give them confidence that the information they put in is actually acknowledged and registered. And based on the discussion we had with Chief Constable earlier, I think similarly the hotspot analytics, I think, were mentioned in the report. Again, it'd be good to know what's coming, and again, the Chief Constable alluded to the fact that we're an exemplar in this area. Making the hotspot policing report adapt our approach, for me, would be the real indicator that it's working. Not so much the detail, but to show that we do move and adapt as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Czapieski, I think one of I'm just looking on the ASB reporting here, and it doesn't actually identify clearly what the offences are that the police record as antisocial behaviour, because the council record antisocial behaviour, which is different to what the police record. So I think that we need to be a lot more explicit, and just to be really clear, my job is to hold the Chief Constable to account for the elements that the police record for antisocial behaviour, not all antisocial behaviour. So, and it's not explicit in the report, I can see that. So that's really helpful to say about it. In terms of the hotspot policing, at the moment, I think that some of the challenges that we face is if you recall, a year ago when we started hotspot policing and brought before you the acting chief constable and the chief inspector who was overseeing the programme, for those of you that were here, it was made of a promise then that they would build it into business as usual, if you recall. I haven't had to hold the chief constable to account around that, because then we got more money on overtime that we couldn't spend to continue with it. So they didn't build it in to business as usual because we got more money for it. So I think the challenge for us will be, when the budget comes in now, how we build that which has been promised, but I'm not going to hold them to account when they've just got a load of money and we need to spend it on overtime to do exactly the same thing, to make a whole load of business change at that point. So I think there's some opportunity going forward about how do we build that into business as usual, and how do we analyse the data that has been collected? Has it made a difference? Academically, they tell us it should, but has it? I mean, it'll still, those high crime areas will probably still be the high crime areas, but and the issue with when you have visible policing, the most thing that we found in the street focus work in Torquay, which also had hotspot in it, is that there was massive underreporting of crime in high crime areas. That's the biggest thing I learned out of the Torquay hotspot work, which is why we promoted Crime Stoppers, and the level of tolerance of crime that was acceptable in that area was immense. We fall between that usual issue of getting more reports of crime while we're saying hotspot policing will reduce the crime. So I haven't seen the evaluation of it fully yet, but that might be something, especially if we lose the funding, to bring here to see that so that you can challenge that we are building it in to business as usual if it's something that is working for us.
Very briefly, thank you, Police Crime Commissioner. You reminded me the other part of my question is precisely that amalgamation of the information that's coming from the councils and with the police. We're sitting here saying some information is coming from here, some information is coming from here. I would like to be able to have a method for bringing that together, and maybe that's the recommendation that we could put forward. Just to go back, my question was really pertaining to the numbers. What comes out of those numbers? Totally agree, it's a separate subject. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm just asking about the numbers. Will we see more detailed numbers? And you part answered that question. I think you've committed.
When you say the numbers, what do you mean? Which numbers of what? Sorry.
On ASB's, the next level down, so that we can see whether assaults are going up or down, whether neighbourhood disputes are going up and down. With regard to hotspot policing, that's the type of offences, precisely what you said, the rate of reporting. For me, personally, the rate of reporting is an indication of success. If we're getting more reports, I know it's more work for you guys and more numbers, but my understanding, I believe correctly, is that if the police have more detailed information, more accurate, more timely reports, they may not be able to respond immediately, but they build up a better intelligence picture, which allows them to anticipate and move their resources around, like ambulances park in places where accidents are going to happen. And if people are not reporting, it's making the police's job much harder. So if we improve the reporting, it makes the police's job maybe not easier, but more manageable. Thank you.
And Councillor, I suppose to reassure you, at a more local level, at a community safety partnership level, all of that information is seen in the round. So that is managed with the police through the statutory duty of the Crime and Disorder Act. The statutory duty to oversee that is happening at a local authority upper tier level, and there is some district ones in Devon as well, but that is being managed at the community safety partnership level. We did used to have, if you recall, some who have been here some time, a Peninsula Strategic Assessment, and we used to have the help of a fantastic analyst, Erica Sorensen, as you know, Councillor German, who's from Cornwall Council, who we used to pay to be able to produce the strategic assessment, but due to stretched resources and challenges, we actually have an absence of that. That might be a recommendation, because I think whatever may be something that comes after myself is actually building in the infrastructure to actually inform everybody at that strategic level might be a helpful thing.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you for that exchange on hotspot policing, because I was going to raise that, but you've raised it in a better way. But just added to that, one of the things that concerns me, and I think concerned us at the time when we were shown how hotspot policing was going to be viable and to carry on. I think a lot of us thought, well, that's a great wish list, but that's going to be quite a big ask for it to be embedded that way without an extra cost. But with it being run on overtime, sometimes I believe there are other things that come up as overtime. For instance, having to be called in for extra resources for across the country for demonstrations, which are potentially riots, but start calling them demonstrations, and all sorts of other things that when that happens, the officers are then called away. They can't, there's only so much overtime one officer can do within 1 month. So very often that's taken them away from the hotspot policing because of that. And then what we found in Exeter is our Saturday weekend crime ASB figures have gone up. And it's because they've been taken away. So just wanted to add that. I'm sorry, I'm being really cheeky because here's my question. Sorry, Chair, which isn't to do with that. So I'm sorry, that was a bit cheeky. But I've got a question around reporting concerns and potential crimes. So I can't see anything recorded anywhere about what is a trigger point. If you report, or if a member of the public reports or asks us as councillors to report a concern, for instance, about modern slavery in a certain place, and gives quite a lot of detail, and then the answer comes back, we have to wait for more people to raise this before we do anything. I'm wondering what that trigger, who sets that sort of trigger point of how many concerns you have to have raised by members of the public over a certain thing. I would presume it would just be one before it gets looked into, but that seems not to be the case, and I can't find anything anywhere to say, you know, you have to act on this if 5 concerns have been raised. So I know that's very operational, but I wondered if you might be able to look into that, please.
Chairman, if I may, just to also reinforce around the hotspot, there's no way that would be able to be made business as usual without what the Chief Constable's doing with Operation Resolve, putting those resources back to where they should be. So, because what's been happening is where people have been abstracted or gone to other roles, they've not been backfilled. Neighbourhood has been pulled into doing the response job, or as they call it, the patrol job today, which means they can't plan their prevention patrols and other things that they may do, and are pulled into the day job to answer those 999 calls, which will always take priority. But it's because of that under-resourcing on both patrol and on neighbourhood, where they've actually got vacancies that should be filled already. This isn't even putting extra in, this is putting what should be there in. And I think stabilising that will be a game changer if he can hold his nerve and keep the numbers there. Because what he said he would do is protect them once they're there. The individuals don't need to be protected, they can move as long as it's being backfilled. So this is his promise to you today. So that's really key to make that work. Just in terms of, as we know with anything in our communities, the more people who complain about it, the more likely the police are to act. Let's be really frank about anything around antisocial behaviour or unauthorised encampments. If you get one complaint and the police have got 5 complaints about something else over there, they'll go and do the 5 complaints. If they've got 5 logs that have come in complaining about something and 1 log, that will happen naturally. But when it's something as serious as modern slavery, I am absolutely astonished that that would be the case. And if there is a concern about that and it hasn't been dealt with, please come to me and see, especially as I've overseen the modern slavery and organised immigration crime portfolio for so long. There isn't a trigger point, there isn't a threshold. So please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Going to move on. I know other people, if you had questions, I'm sure the Commissioner would be very happy for you to email her if you haven't had the opportunity today. Moving on to item 9, I'm now going to hand over to Fran, please.
Thank you, Chair. Nice and easy today. There are no new complaints to bring to the panel today.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10. Is there anything that members want to raise regarding the action log, please? Oh, yeah. Councillor Loudon first, please.
Chair, it straddles this item and the forward plan, and it's just to pick up something that happened earlier on in the meeting. There was an exchange between you and the Commissioner over a particular item, and it was when did we meet, when did we agree, etc. And I've just sat here thinking, I'm sorry, this is an admin thing. And if I go through, we have a log of actions, we have a forward plan. It should not be a surprise to any of us what is coming surely at the next meeting. And do we not have a schedule of meetings between the two parties to set the agenda that are already in the diary for the civic year? We do that in my council. Surely that's what we have here. And I'm not quite sure I'm understanding why anybody, and it's not a dig at the Commissioner or her staff, why anybody should be surprised at the requirement, unless it's a last minute item, for something to come forward, and therefore the person required to develop the report and the agenda item isn't given sufficient notice to do it in detail. I'm just slightly bemused.
If I start answering that one, because it's myself and Vice Chair that meet with with the Commissioners team. Yes, how it normally would work is the Commissioners team will know what's the standard items that have been requested on, and you know, sometimes we, as a chair, we might get asked to put an item on which we would let the Commissioners team know. You know, that is still 3 weeks notice prior to the papers. So there seems to have been a little bit of it seems to be a little bit of an error gone on somewhere along the line, and I don't really think that's for here to open a debate on. But yes, the be all and end all, and the Commissioners team actually has what's in front of you, so it is expected of what's coming forward. All right. Yeah, just to help, sorry, Vice Chair, just to help, the next agenda setting meeting that myself and Vice Chair will have is with Commissioners team is on the 2nd of December. Okay, Vice Chair, did you have something you wanted to bring in?
To support that, I mean, obviously we're all busy people, and so I appreciate that sometimes we do get an item that comes up which isn't necessarily noted on the action log. In my other role, I'm chair of a Health and Adult Social Care Committee, and I think perhaps it might be an idea to have is this a suggestion? Obviously, and I haven't spoken to you, Chair, about it, but obviously just almost have a rolling item for any urgent items that might come up, which we can then bring onto the agenda for next time. It doesn't, you know, I'm just thinking whether we could do that as a suggestion, so then we don't end up with the potential issues that we've had today. Just an idea.
Good idea. It comes under any other business. Councillor German.
Thank you. Commissioner, item number 15 regarding the draft annual plan should have an accessible version for members of the public. You've had 4 months to consider whether or not you want to produce an accessible version for members of the public going forward. What is your decision?
Chairman, I did agree to do that. I'm again looking. The new head of comms only started in October, so bear with me. It is something that we need to do. We are making it accessible on the website, but I'm not even sure if it's on the website yet. I'm looking over to have confirmation or not.
It is uploaded to the website, and in fact, last night I was experimenting with the excellent suggestion that was made by one of you at the last meeting that we could use AI to make other versions of the report, and I'm going to feed that back to my colleagues so that we can look at whether that is in fact a viable option for us.
Thank you. That's good to hear, and look forward to the action log being updated.
Thank you. Gordon?
Thank you. Councillor Czepieski, Mid-Devon. Just to expand on the questions I asked earlier, I think it's the right place to put them. If we could have the enhanced ASB report added to the action log, and possibly hotspot analytics, if that's appropriate. And on previous meeting, there was talk of a report about custody suites. Again, I think from the questions that were asked here, it would be good to know at what point we had something to talk about custody suites, because, as was said here, local councils, local people have input that maybe the force would find useful and helpful. So having a report prior to any final decisions being made, I think would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to add that onto the work programme as well. All right. So, Councillor Lever, please.
Thank you, Chair. Love the fact that we have an action log. Really helpful. I think all panels of all varieties should have something like this. I just wanted to look at number 8 on the about the Commissioner's update report on the draft plan around the delivery of safest streets to the panel. It's the only one I can see here on the right-hand column. There is nothing noted under progress, and I just wondered if you could tell us what progress has been made or is planned to be made. Thank you.
Might be helpful if I answer that question. I believe the original question was asked by Councillor Penberthy, and we haven't brought a document because no such document exists, and it's been dealt with retrospectively, and as much as government have asked for quarterly returns, so there have been 2 quarterly returns, because I believe your question was in relation to the Summer Safe Towns programme. The second return has only just about gone in a matter of, I think it might even still be in transit, so there have only been 2, and of course the government have now changed that to a safer winter, so there's no plan that I'm able to share. The detail that's gone back in the returns has actually been included in the Commissioner's update reports as we've gone through, so there's not a separate document that I can share with you.
Sorry, Chair, if you don't mind, I just wondered if it might be helpful just to make reference to that in this document. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake, are you able to do that update? Thank you.
Councillor Penberthy.
Thanks. I'm looking at numbers 34 and 35, which we've already discussed in terms of firearms licensing and costs. Given that after today's meeting you've talked about what you will then do in terms of writing to MPs on full cost recovery, I'd quite like to leave 35 open rather than closing it, because that's closing the loop to bring all that information back to us for further discussion if necessary. So can we keep 35 open, please?
Very helpful. Councillor Hackett.
Thank you, Chair. I know I've kept on about this for 2 years, but could we put on the action log for the Police and Crime Commissioner to attend Bideford, or at least give us a date? The council were completely dismayed about the shoplifting initiative going to Torbay when we have an enormous problem in shops closing in Bideford. Thank you.
I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem. We'll put that on the action list. Caroline.
Yeah, just thinking about accessible reports going on your website. There's number 17 around young people having access to the annual report so that schools can use that in PSHE. And again, that's in progress. Is that something you're going to be looking at? And are you going to be working with young people to actually produce that version?
At the moment, we've been directly engaging with schools and colleges, but I think the conversation that Ben highlighted around using AI, it's about simplifying the language in it so it's more understandable. So that we will definitely commit to make it easier. I actually, right at this time, can't commit to really doing much more new in light of the announcement of the abolishment of this role. Yeah. So there is some, and I think this will be an important conversation that we have through the budget process and the council tax setting, is intent of what it, no, as I've been informed by the Home Office via the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, the government wants a transition team in place by January. So we are talking, this may go at pace. So I'm just saying that there is an uncertainty at all about the future right now. And I would just like to place on record a thank you to my office, who were told at absolutely short notice that they were about to lose their jobs potentially, and have kept their head held high and have acted very professionally, and they have still got a job to do. We've still got to do appeals for complaints against the police. We still have to run the independent custody visitor scheme. We still have to deliver on our commitments around scrutiny. We still have to make sure that the budget is set, and we scrutinise the chief around the resourcing. We still need to make sure that our victim services are being delivered and that they don't fall over. I'm really worried about some of that. So I just want to thank my team, if you're happy for me to do that, Chair, for being professional this week and continuing to work hard as they always do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to item 11. We've talked a little bit about the work programme. Anyway, is there any more that members would like to add? Councillor Penberthy, please.
Yes, it's just on page 137 under items to be monitored. In your report, Commissioner, you talk quite a lot about the scrutinies you've done in terms of, I've done a scrutiny, I'm satisfied about a scrutiny, but actually the monitoring is actually to understand more about that, not just that you've done them. I wondered whether it's possible for your office and Democratic Support to work together to maybe provide us a quick synopsis of the scrutinies and the outcomes of those, or something as an addendum paper to your report, so that, because that might inform further things, and as changes come in, might help us to make sure that some of that comes forward. So it's just a practicality on how it's done that I wanted to see if we could get teased out before the next meeting.
Chairman, just so you know that those scrutiny reports are published on the website. I'm not sure if we immediately tell you or inform you when they are published on the website. I think that's something we should do straight away. And those assurance reports, we try to identify why I'm assured or not assured around some of that performance, which will be helpful for you. So I think if we can just take an action of my team, that we will, whenever we publish it, we will send panel members a link to that scrutiny. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Hackett?
Yes. Could I ask that we put on community speed watch and location of speed cameras?
Sorry, Councillor Hackett, can we have one meeting? Because I
Sorry,
struggle with hearing and I can't hear anything.
Sorry.
So, Councillor Hackett, please.
Right. Can I ask that we put on the forward plan community speed watch letters? They don't identify drivers rather than vehicles. And am I right in thinking that a marker is put against a vehicle and therefore a driver for the issue of speed awareness letters?
Are you talking about Vision Zero? No, it's not. It's not. We're not having questions to the Commissioner. I'm asking if we want work to go on the work programme.
This is what I want on the work programme.
Would you like Vision Zero to go on the work programme?
Vision Zero, yes, for those
Thank
items.
You. Thank you. It's Councillor Hackett, it's for us to put our work programme together, not for the Commissioner to answer yes or no to. Okay.
Understood.
Yes, Vice.
Sorry, just a sort of quick question. Obviously, we're talking about the budget or precept next time, but considering obviously the announcement this last week, would it be worth having something on the work programme about the potential changes for next time, as to what you think actually you won't then be able to fund going forwards? Because I think we're all around here fighting for our little bit, but it would be worth knowing, following the announcement, from the funding point of view from local government, but also from your point of view, from a practical point of view, whether we could somehow or other, again, it only has to be a briefing note, it doesn't have to be a conversation. Is that something that we could do? Sorry, I might have thrown something in there.
Might I just be able to assist with that issue? We know from the Home Secretary this week that the announcement on the white paper on the future of policing is imminent. We don't, because of the way these meetings fall, it's likely that we won't have met in time before the white paper closes. So I do wonder whether it might be helpful if myself and some of my colleagues in the office actually offer to run you a workshop or a discussion forum about the contents of the white paper, because it actually will affect the role of this panel as well, which is also being abolished in the proposals. And then you'll be fully informed about what the changes are, and that will then help feed both our decision making and yours.
Can I leave that as an action plan for yourself and Jake to get together and organise that?
As soon as we know,
Yeah, that'd be
and we know
brilliant.
what the timetable is,
That's
we
very
can factor
helpful.
something in.
Thank you for the offer. Okay, members, can I just say thank you very much for your consideration of moving around, and thank you, Commissioner, and to your team as well. Sorry for the upheaval. Joe, did you want to say anything before I close this meeting?
Just very quickly, it'd just be interesting to know how people felt about meeting in this room rather than upstairs, because I did suggest it, and by hook or by crook, we've ended up in here.
Shall I'm quite happy to give you an answer, and the reason why we're upstairs is for it's more accessibility. Okay, we used to be in this room, but upstairs is actually a lot better for a lot of people. So it was took on board, and also, are you happy to? It's accessibility, isn't it? Really.
That's absolutely, yeah.
Can we take this as a discussion offline? I don't think the general public need to know what room we're in when we're not in. So can I thank members, and I look forward to our meeting in January. And may I say, I wish you all, I feel very strange to say this, I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I will see you in the new year. Thank you, members.